In this presentation, let's look at gender quotas and the welfare impact. Many countries around the world are amending their political systems to set aside positions to groups such as women or racial minorities that have been perceived to be disadvantaged in the past. We're drawing on the work of an economist named Esther Duflo. Esther's at the top of Foreign Policy's 2009 ranking of the world's top thinkers, and The Independent recently called her the new face of French intellectualism. She's the co-founder of the MIT's Poverty Action Lab, and her basic shtick is imposing new rigor on everything from women's empowerment to computer-assisted learning. I was interested to find that she had done a study in India looking at gender quotas, and that's the basis for this presentation. We now go to India, where we have a look at the local government system. The local government system is called Panchayat. It's a system of local councils that are responsible for the administration of local public goods. The members of these councils are elected, and they go from village level up to district level. There's a chair named the Pradhan, who's sort of the chief and the leader of the council, but who doesn't have veto power over the decisions of the council. The council makes decisions by majority voting, and the Pradhan, who's the chair, is the only person with a full-term appointment. The candidates are generally nominated by political parties, but they must be residents of the villages involved. And the councils administer local public goods in the area. They monitor civil servants, and they're also responsible for identifying the beneficiaries of various transfer programs. Now, what's interesting for us, of course, is the gender quotas and/or the reserved seats. That's 1 out of 3 seats in all of the councils are reserved for women, as well as some seats are reserved for other disadvantaged minorities according to their proportion of the local population. What's interesting about this is that these rotate from council to council. So, say, in terms of women, every 3 terms, the chair of the council must be a woman. So that means effectively that you not only have a term limit for men of no more than 2 terms, but also that in terms of statistical purposes, that this is a sort of randomized sample, and that's very useful for looking at it statistically. The villages that have women as their leaders are picked randomly, so we wouldn't have any sample bias. So we can actually look at this and then extrapolate from this sample. So this policy, the 1992 policy, was supposed to alter the distribution of public goods in favor of the disadvantaged groups. And so this study looks to see if that succeeded. Now, this gets very complicated, so I'll go through it very quite slowly. What this is it's a graph of the coefficients of the regression that Defoe did between various public services, as you can see on the bottom, starting with roads, for instance, and whether they were reserved seats at the time or unreserved seats at the time. So what we can look at, for instance, in roads, is that the little blue blip down there, which is very small, of course, is the coefficient for roads roads being from 1 to 0 in an unreserved seat, and the red blip down there with a 0.41 over it, that is the coefficient for roads in a reserved seat. What that means essentially, and this is where the yellow line comes in. That yellow line is the difference between these 2 coefficients, based off of course, the lower coefficient. So we can see, for instance, that there's a 78% difference between the 0.23 and the 0.41. These are not exactly probabilities, but we can say that there's 78% improvement in the roads in the reserved seats. So that's quite a substantial improvement. We see, of course, a negative improvement there on the next one. And then again, another positive improvement once we get up to water utilities and other public services. So what this means in short, in that in districts where there are reserved seats for women, we're much more likely to see better roads, better water facilities, and other public facilities. So that's clearly quite a positive finding. There were some other conclusions as well from Dufault's study that I haven't put in that graph, but that we'll go over here. We can see that reservation does, significantly increase the access of disadvantaged groups to political decision making, quite effectively actually. And what we saw in the graph is that these groups redirect resources towards their preferences or they're interested. Now, what we see though as well is that some of the things that they redirected to, for instance, roads, which were 78% better, are actually public goods that everyone can use. So in some ways this shows that they're actually doing a better job of governance at these local councils. At the same time, here's another finding that she said, is that the politicians that come into power are less educated and less experienced than their unreserved counterparts, basically, than their male counterparts. But that this doesn't come at the expense of good decision making. So that's another very positive finding, that education and experience are not the be-all and end-all of good governance. And lastly, she tested actually the quality and quantity of public services delivered and didn't see any changes there either. Also finding that women are much less likely to take bribes. So that's another immensely positive finding. The last thing that we see here, of course, is the citation if you want more information. Thanks very much for watching.